waiting in line for to see some stars, and turns out it was the porta potty line.
Yeah, that was me.
That was not our shining moment.
Everybody was in a line, and they were like, all the lines are super long, and there were all these people in a line. So like they said, just hop in a line. It was so dark.
It's
and then
pitch black.
I was like, I think this might be the porta potty. It was the porta potty line.
It was, yes.
Welcome to In the Parks, part of the Get Indiana podcast network, and what is usually an Indiana State Parks podcast. I'm Allison Martin, and I'm excited to take you on a family trip to learn about some amazing places outside the Hoosier State. Think of this as a little field trip or a brief side quest. I think our parks, state and national, show off the best of America, but there's so much more to them than you might expect. So it's time to go in depth to really know the stories and discover what makes each destination unique and valuable as part of the U.S. On a short season 2 of In the Parks, you'll learn about the people, legends, and places that formed Utah's Mighty 5 national parks. Today, we're going to Bryce Canyon National Park. Why is an Indiana State Parks podcast talking about a national park? Well, my family, all originally Hoosiers, and half of us still Indiana residents, we took a big trip out west for my dad's 70th birthday. He wanted to visit Utah's Mighty 5, the 5 national parks spread across the southwest corner of the state. We did a lot of research to make it happen, and I wanted to share our tips, mistakes, regrets, and memories so other people can have an amazing trip to the Mighty 5 too. And selfishly, I wanted to remember this time and record the voices of the people I love the most. Going into the trip, there was some concern expressed by certain family members that long hikes would be too daunting. Requests were made to keep our hikes around 2 miles at a time. Well, by day 2, we were throwing that right out the window. The real plan at Bryce Canyon was to hike over a 3-mile loop down into the canyon and back up. I knew from my friend Susie that these canyons filled with hoodoos were her favorite, and hiking into them was a must. So when concerned family members asked how far the hike would be, the answer was a vague, a couple miles or so. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me give you a quick overview of the area, because there are less options for lodging here. Bryce Canyon National Park is a couple miles from Bryce Canyon City, where you'll find Ruby's Inn. The inn has been around since 1916, and while the name sounds small and quaint, it is now anything but that. There are hundreds of rooms, camping, activities, rentals, a shuttle to the park, and many other amenities. There's lodging inside the park, which I'll talk about later, and there are also hotels available, some a little farther away. But Ruby's is a great option for a place to stay. After our full day at Bryce Canyon, my brother David and I talked about our experiences as we drove to the next park.
We also stayed at the historic Ruby's Inn. They have a campground, and they have the motel rooms, basically. They open straight out to the parking lot, which I know some people are kind of weirded out about, but it felt really safe in that area.
It did. It was very well lit, and it was huge. They had a ton of rooms there. I don't know what their total count is, but overall, it kind of felt like they were the spot to stay in the town. So they had they kind of had a monopoly on the place, it felt like. But really, really comfortable room overall. An older place, as you'd expect. Not a Ritz or a Hilton, even for that matter, but at the same time, comfortable, nice people. They have a general store there.
That had a lot more in it.
That was significant. That was much more than I ever thought it was going to be, actually, when it came to clothing. Of course, they got a little grocery store in there.
They had a pool, they had a
supplies.
laundromat, so if you were there for a while, they had free breakfast with it, and it was a pretty extensive breakfast buffet.
Yeah.
It was probably about the quality of food I would have expected, where it's eggs, sausage, French toast, and peaches and beets and boiled eggs and stuff like that. But the restaurant dinner was pretty good. They actually had a bigger variety than I thought, and some higher cost meals too.
Yeah.
I would say beds are super comfortable. Rooms were nice. I felt like the bathroom floor had probably never had their grout cleaned, and I didn't want to stand on it barefoot. But everything else was really fine about it, and I slept really well, and not just because we were in bed at 11:30 their time, which was again 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, definitely slept well. Ready to conk out as soon as we got in there. I think we were all ready for some sleep, but it was definitely one of those things where the hotel was in a prime location, has everything you need for a longer stay, if that's what you're interested in, or if you're just doing one night like we did. It was perfect no matter what your trip you're planning. So that was a great place. I would highly recommend it.
Just outside Ruby's Inn is a multi-purpose paved path that extends from the town to the park. It was about 1.5 to 2 miles to the park entrance, Then it wove throughout the park. I ran an out and back and logged 3 miles the evening we got there, totally forgetting we were now at about 7,800 feet above sea level. I thought I was dying. I didn't notice the elevation while we were walking, but as soon as I tried to do anything more aerobic, I could definitely tell we were higher than we were at Zion. You may have noticed that we got to bed around 11:30 Utah time, 1:30 a.m. back in Indiana. Why were we up so late? Well, we were fortunate to have arrived at Bryce Canyon during a really amazing event, Astronomy Fest.
Randomly ended up at Bryce Canyon the week of Astronomy Fest, so that was awesome.
How perfect was that?
You ditched your daughter.
I did.
And Andy ditched his kids.
Worth it.
And I didn't have to ditch anybody. And we did leave grandparents and a mom around and snuck out like we were teenagers, sneaking out from mom and dad.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was.
And then we took a shuttle into Bryce Canyon from historic Ruby's Inn, and we don't even know where we were because everything was pitch black, and there were like these red lights on the ground and all these different stations. So there were different like naturalists that were using these crazy high-powered laser pointers to point out different constellations. And then, did they say there were like 20 to 25 telescopes set up?
It's hard to see because, pitch black, but there were quite a few. I would say there was at least a dozen. I don't know if there was as many as 25, but there was quite a crowd out there of, were these, I guess, amateur astronomers?
I guess.
Maybe some were a little bit more than amateurs.
They could have been college professors because those college students were at the school, were at the Nature Center today.
Yeah, it could have been something like that they were involved with the university. But really cool event. Drew quite a crowd, actually. There was a number of people there.
Because our shuttle was totally crammed full.
And I would be willing to bet that most of the people who were here this weekend did not plan their trip around Astronomy Fest.
I would agree.
So the fact that they saw that it was happening and wanted to be a part of it was just a testament to show how exciting of a thing it really was to be able to see the stars in Bryce Canyon.
When Bryce Canyon is a dark sky official spot, so even I feel like any night, if it's a clear night, you're going to get incredible views. But having all the astronomers there, each one of them had very expensive telescopes that were pointed at different things in the sky. So you could have seen some sort of star exploding that happened like 23,000 light years away, or they were pointing out to you where things were. Like we saw where the Milky Way, we saw there were a couple planets, like you could see Venus really clearly. They were pointing out different things through their telescopes that, and then explaining what you were looking at. So that was kind of helpful so that you knew what was significant about what you were seeing.
Yeah, that was nice to hear about that, because astronomy is definitely not one of those things that people know a whole lot about. I think for the average person, the most they can talk about it is whatever their horoscope is.
That's astrology.
Whatever. Same thing.
It's not the same thing at all.
There's my knowledge about it.
So probably most people do that.
Yeah, exactly. They do. They think of this. So it was nice to see.
But they're both connected to the stars. You're right.
What real professionals were going to bring their insight, their expertise, their knowledge of what we were looking at, what we were participating in.
Jumping into Astronomy Fest was a great experience and worth the late night. My brother Andy is a great iPhone photographer and was able to capture some wonderful shots of the star-filled sky. I asked him some tips on phone photography at night, because it's something you can do anywhere there's a dark sky.
Yeah, the iPhone photography is really a fun thing to do. There's a few key tricks you kind of have to know in order to do it. And there's a couple things that you'd want to have in order to make it even be possible. First thing is, if you want to take nighttime photography pictures with your phone, holding it steady with your hands will only do so much. You need a way to actually set the phone down somehow so that it doesn't have any vibrations at all. The best way to do that, obviously, is by getting a tripod. You don't need anything fancy, but some sort of a tripod to set the phone on is going to allow you to maximize the exposure time on your phone. So you can actually get up to a 30-second exposure take on most newer phones. Particularly, I'm thinking of any of the newish iPhones from the past few years. So if you put the phone on the tripod, you can switch it into a longer exposure setting. And after it sits there for a second or two, you'll see it jump from 10 seconds up to the 30-second option, which works quite well. The biggest thing, if you want a picture that actually is going to turn out as something that you might want to actually look at or show someone and think is cool or print or that kind of thing, is that if you take a picture with just of the sky itself, it's just going to look like a black picture with a whole bunch of light colored dots on it. And that's probably not that cool. So you want something in the bottom part of your picture that's going to eventually show up, whether that's even just some trees or something on the horizon. You might not be able to see it super well in the dark, especially at first, but as you get a 30-second exposure, you'll begin to see that object, and it just gives something of a reference point to what is this picture? What are these white dots I'm seeing in the sky?
Andy gave me some real-time pointers while we were in the dark parking lot in the middle of Bryce Canyon. My phone wasn't as new as his, so I only had a 10-second exposure, but I hadn't tried using it, so I was grateful to learn how. The tip about using the natural landscape as a reference point was also really helpful, and it made my pictures look a lot better.
The other thing that's really cool, if you can figure it out, especially depending on how dark it really is which way, if you can even see, which way the Milky Way is appearing, if it's coming up on the horizon or not. If you can get some of the Milky Way galaxy to actually show up in the picture as well, that's extra cool. That'll be a lot harder if the moon is out, but if it's closer to a new moon or is a new moon, like it was when we were in Bryce Canyon and Moab, then you can really start to see that quite well.
He said sometimes the focus can be tricky to get right.
So the trick that I've read online is that you want to, quote unquote, set your focus to infinity, which can be done by touching and holding briefly somewhere on the screen, not on the object that's in your foreground, but somewhere off in the sky, and just hold that down and it'll auto lock your focus. For me, this worked well sometimes and sometimes it didn't. So the hardest thing that I didn't quite figure out how to do well was how to get the focus just right. So in some of them, I'd have something in the foreground be a little blurry, or sometimes the back, like the stars, would almost look a little blurred. So that was the hardest thing for me, was to get that to work quite right.
The other great thing about the Bryce Canyon event was, since it was an official astronomy week, only the park shuttle buses were taking people in, and they had their lights dimmed. We didn't have to worry about car headlights ruining the view. Andy and our mom went into Arches National Park, and there were cars going by whose headlights messed up their pictures. But Bryce Canyon had it set up really nice.
They had like the astronomy week going on, and so they had all these red lights out because the red light wouldn't interfere with it would give you enough light that you could see where you're going. People weren't going to be tripping and falling everywhere, but yet it wouldn't mess up the telescopes that people had set up. The funny thing was, then, when every picture I took had a red glow to it, because I'm taking long 30-second exposures, and any light that's kind of around me on the ground or glowing up on the trees was red. So it kind of looked funny in some of the photos at first, but what I do is I just turn the photo black and white. And if you just turn the photo black and white, then the red light just turns to white light, and then the photos look quote unquote normal. And so it actually was just fine. The one thing that was neat, though, is I did get one picture there where I kept some of, just the people walking around and the setup with their telescopes in part of like the lower part of the photo as my reference point, with some trees and then the stars up above them. And that actually gave more of a story, and that made more of an interesting photo than just not having any people in it at all. So that sometimes that can be a benefit, because it can be kind of a cool thing. And you get people moving around, and with the long exposure, then it causes some blurring of some lights, and you see some of that movement and action, and that can be kind of actually a neat thing.
The entire astronomy event went on for several days and nights, with lessons about the sky from various astronomers. If your trip overlaps, I would definitely recommend taking advantage of it.
Yeah, they definitely made sure that the event was done well, so that way, what it was intending to do, it actually did, which was allow people to use the telescopes and actually use them to their capability to see things, and then share that with us novices walking around, that we got to see some of that cool stuff as well.
The next morning, we got breakfast at Ruby's Inn and headed into the park. There was no line to get in, and we arrived around 8 a.m. I will note, by lunchtime, there were cars waiting to find parking spots at sunrise and sunset points. So getting there in the morning is wise, but it doesn't have to be 6 a.m. And once we were parked and sunscreened up, we walked up the paved path to Sunset Point, and wow. I'll let my brothers describe it for you.
We walk in, we're driving in, and we're driving through what seems to be just forest. So it doesn't look like it's anything out of the ordinary from what we'd seen all in town.
Yeah, just like pine trees.
Correct. Pine trees all around.
When we walked up to the edge of the canyon in Bryce Canyon the next morning, I'll say surprise and just awe as you walk through what just feels like a normal, like, Colorado forest, like a thin pine forest. And then you get up to the edge and you look over and you're like, oh my, like, where on earth am I? What is this? Like, not having seen any of it. It was really awe-inspiring and breathtaking.
And then out of nowhere, boom, there it is in front of you, is just miles of hoodoos and this canyon of red rock of all kinds of shades of red and orange, yellow, white. It doesn't seem to make sense from where you were. And from there, you're just awestruck. And you can't help but just feel a little small as you can see out for miles and miles. And just see all of these dramatic landscape changes all across in every direction.
It was so starkly different from what you're in the forest to what's on the other side. It was as if you walk through a veil, like the canyon and the hoodoos and the colors and everything else, and that just emptiness of trees, basically, for the most part, compared to what you were seeing at the top, were so different that it's almost like you stepped into a different world all of a sudden.
What is this world of hoodoos? It really is hard to describe them. From an imaginative viewpoint, scoop out pockets of the ground, then dribble wet sand into massive towers with the whimsy of Dr. Seuss and the color palette of red clay. From a scientific standpoint, these aren't canyons, but amphitheaters. The distinction goes back to how they're formed, but from the naked eye, they look about the same. And what is a hoodoo? Here are Andy's girls reading the informational sign.
Life of the hoodoos. Rain and mountain snow erode the edge of this high plateau at a rate of 1 to 4 feet every century. As the rim erodes harder, cap rock layers preserve softer rocks below, forming rock walls called fins. Here at 8,000 feet, nightly temperatures fall between freezing half of the year. Snowmelt and rain trickle into cracks and expand as it turns to ice, fracturing the rock and forming holes called windows. This process is called frost wedging. Chemical weathering also occurs as acids into
Precipitation. Do you know what that precipitation is? Rain.
precipitation.
So there's sometimes acids in the rain, just chemicals in the water. So when it rains, it dissolves the calcium carbonate that holds the rocks together. And then those windows get bigger and it collapses and it creates these hoodoos. Follow that? Basically, ice and rain both weather and erode the rocks, creating hoodoos. Hoodoos are found all over the world, but Bryce Canyon is special because...
Bryce Canyon has the greatest concentration of hoodoos on Earth!
If you want to see a lot of hoodoos, go to Bryce Canyon. Today we understand more of their formation, but to the native people who lived here originally, there was a different story told.
Of course, the story even went, the mythology of it is that they were people that had been cursed by, was it the coyote god trickster, and those who had done evil got tricked and ended up getting turned into these hoodoos.
Even today, we name the rock formations after our modern cultural stories. One of the most famous hoodoos is called Thor's Hammer. We could clearly see it as we looked down into the valley below.
There's the handles and the hammer, but the hammer doesn't look like Thor's hammer.
No, it's not quite as big as Thor's hammer does, is it? Do you want to go down in there?
Yeah, I'm gonna go hike. Yeah.
What do you think what does it look like?
There's like a lot of stacked stone, but they're connected all around.
What are the main colors you see down here?
Like white and red.
Yeah, what kind of red is that?
Orange red.
Yeah, kind of an orange red, isn't it? But is there only red? What else is colors do you see down here? What else is there?
Green.
Green what?
Trees.
And shrubs and some grass?
Yeah. I don't get how trees can grow on the rock.
I don't either. Well, there is some soil down there because that's what their roots are getting into.
Probably be hard to get through the rock. So
Probably.
Most of them are...
But what lesson can we learn about that? Can you maybe grow any place you're planted?
I tried to throw in some lessons to my nephew, but he was a lot more excited to get the hike started. It was in the upper 50s when we began. Some in the family kept their sun shirts on all day, but I was comfortable in short sleeves, especially since it warmed up. Our plan was to hike down an incredible amount of switchbacks from Sunset Point, hike through the hoodoos, and come back up Sunrise Point. Here, David and I discussed the plan and what we might have done differently.
And the loop we did was the Navajo Loop, and then there's also the Queen's Garden Loop, and they're kind of connected to each other, so you can do them separately, and each one was like a mile and a half, or if you connect them together, it'd end up being 3.1 miles.
Yeah, about a
so
5K.
you get a 5K, and they suggested going one direction in the trail map, but I think we went the other direction.
Yeah,
Because we went down the switchbacks that are like much more aggressive to Wall Street, and then caught the Queen's Garden, and then we had to climb up out of it. But other people have gone the other way, but I think those switchbacks were pretty nasty. So, I mean, it's going to be steep either way.
Yeah.
It just depends what way you want to do it, I think.
Yeah, the switchbacks, for me anyways, I liked the route that we went, not just because of the, more gradual incline that we did to get back to the top of the rim, but also because your viewpoint looking down into the canyon as you're going back and forth was, I think, a better viewpoint and vantage point than if you were going to be going up it, just because of great photo opportunities. And it was just cool to see from that perspective, looking down into the canyon.
The only thing I wonder is if we had done it the other way, would you have had any shade at the end if you went up the switchbacks, just because of how deep you are? And would that have been better? Because we were pretty exposed at the end when we came back up, and that might have helped some of the kids. But I don't know, the switchbacks were pretty aggressive, and they felt like they never ended. You just felt like you kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper in. And if you had to climb out all of that at once, I think it would be a lot. Where climbing out the Queen's Garden way, you had a few more breaks.
That's true. You did definitely have more breaks, which was very welcomed, because by that point in time, it's 10 to 10:30-ish as we were kind of finishing up that last half mile or so.
Yeah, I think it took us a little, 2.5 hours, but I stopped and I watched at one point when we ate lunch or snacks. So, I mean, it's a solid 2.5 to 3 hours if you're going to do it.
Yeah, and that as the temperature started to rise and the sun started beating down on you more, you kind of welcomed those little nooks here and there and more trees that were around to be able to catch some of the shade and take those breaks. So that was nice. They had a lot of benches along the way that you could stop at. Like you said, we had a little snack, enjoyed some time to catch up on some water, and take some photos here and there. So that was, I think it was well planned out for us overall.
Part of why we started with the Navajo Loop Trail was to walk through an area called Wall Street, which is currently closed due to heavy rain. It's not the first time rain or rock slides have closed this trail, so if you get a chance to do it, you need to. Wall Street is accessed after descending through all the switchbacks.
So then the first mile, I would say the first probably half mile to a kilometer is mostly just downhill. And then it was really cool when we did Wall Street, because they had to be 20, 30 story rock walls on either side of you, and it was maybe 4 feet across as you walked through. Yeah,
it felt narrow. It was enough for 2 people to walk side by side, maybe 3, but it was 200 feet on either side of you, and just kind of sheer cliffside as you were kind of squeezing your way out of the canyon once you hit the bottom. And that was really cool to see too, the Wall Street.
That was awesome.
Continuing to be the good English teacher that I am, I asked my niece to describe the hoodoos and what else she observed from the bottom of the switchbacks.
We're in Bryce Canyon, and we're in the bottom of it. We hiked down it, and up there you can just see all the giant rock formations. They're up against the blue sky, and the light just bounces off them. They look super pretty, and a whole bunch of people just hiking down. And all the trails have all the rocks on them, so they look very colorful. They look very red. And then the green plants look really nice against the red stones. And there's also some more whitish red stones that are lighter, and they all look super cool.
And we saw a few flowers too. They were almost like a highlighter yellow, weren't they?
Yep, bright yellow flowers every once in a while. But when you go deeper in the canyon, there's no more flowers.
And now we're about to go into more of the more narrow part of the canyon, which is pretty cool. How many buildings tall do you think those are, if you had to guess?
I'd say about 30, maybe, or 40-ish.
Pretty cool.
It's really cool.
What was even more amazing was that at the bottom of the canyon, between 100-foot-tall narrow rock walls, we found something very unexpected.
There was a massive tree with a trunk kind of like the mast of a ship growing straight up between the walls. And I don't understand how that ever had enough sunlight to even do that, but that was cool.
Yeah, that would definitely surprise me, because going down that first descent, that half mile in, was pretty free of vegetation. Once you got to the edge of the canyon itself, when you're working your way down, very free of any vegetation that had any substance at all. And then all of a sudden you have this tree that's a good 15 to 30 inches in diameter. There's a couple different ones, reaching probably also 100 feet tall.
Yeah.
They were huge. They clearly had been well established for a long time, despite all of the wind and water and rain erosion that's been taking place over the past decades and centuries. Those trees have been there for quite some time.
See what I mean about growing where you're planted? Sometimes all it takes is a little soil and sunlight to thrive. Eventually, the narrow walls ended, and it felt like we were really in the hoodoos. The landscape opened up, and we were more exposed to the sun.
But once we were in there, yeah, like you said, the hoodoos, you were just surrounded by them. Some of them, of course, were kind of off in the distance, outside of where the trail was. But some of them were just right there, brushing shoulders with you. And that was kind of fun to see because you did really feel like you were amongst them.
For a while, we wound through the landscape and stayed on level ground. It felt very safe for the kids during this section. The path was clearly marked, and there were places to stop for rest as well. The trail started getting a lot busier, too, with people coming from both directions. As we made our way onto the Queen's Garden Trail and started slowly climbing our way back out, there were more drop-offs, and many were after we popped out of a small tunnel or window, so you'll need to be more mindful of your steps then. The Queen's Garden is named for a rock formation that looks like the profile of Queen Victoria. A very short extension off the main trail will take you to see the rock, and there's a sign featuring the picture of her that the rock seems to mirror. I'm not sure it's a crucial add-on, so if you miss it, don't stress. Finally, it became time for something we were all dreading, the over 700-foot climb up to Sunrise Point.
The final ascent, we climbed back out to Sunrise Point. So we started at sunset, we ended at Sunrise Point. That ended up being over 700 feet of elevation gain. So it was a lot. It wasn't all at once, but the last probably kilometer of it was the most aggressive. And we definitely took it slow. We had a lot of people who needed breaks. We had little kids who were melting down, people who were just overheated and just ready to be done. The kids were ready to be done with it. But they were troopers. I mean, that was a hard 5K to walk, and they did all of it. And they are like 10, 8, 7, and then even the 3-year-olds really held their own, which was pretty impressive.
That was definitely a bit of a surprise, just given the gravity of the hike itself. Very, very tough, challenging for anybody, let alone kids who aren't well versed in hiking.
When you stopped for a break, the views weren't too bad.
So, yeah, as we wrapped up, we kind of had a number of really epic lookouts where you could just see the scale of the rest of the canyon, as well as just the surrounding mountains that were off in the distance as you made your way back up to the top.
But then, once you get to the top of the final points, you notice we ended at Sunrise Point and we had to walk to Sunset Point, which was still another, probably half a mile.
Probably.
Which was paved, and you're on kind of like a rim around it. I don't know if it was the official rim trail, but then we walked that part back to the cars. And that part was what you were saying, where you could really kind of see the expansive and realize, oh my gosh, we were just down in that a little bit ago.
It was the view from the top where my nephew declared,
I'm glad I didn't die.
"Were you afraid you might?"
Yeah. From overheating. I think we all were.
Yay, we didn't die. Truthfully, I was really proud of my parents and the kids for doing so much walking. My brothers both had kids on their backs, and my sister-in-law carried a very healthy 3-year-old for part of the ascent. They were all rock stars, and I definitely had it the easiest. We ate lunch in the parking lot, took pictures of a storm rolling in over Bryce Canyon, and made it to the lodge just as the rain began. Bryce Canyon does have several campgrounds, cabins, a lodge with suites and motel rooms, and there's dining there too. We also took advantage of the park shuttle to ride to the general store, which had ice cream and a small amount of basics for people camping. There was a gift shop in the lodge, but we found some of the prices to be a little higher than the main park gift shop. And speaking of gifts, I have the perfect option for the Indiana State Park lover in your life. How about a new In the Parks hat to rep our home state's beauty? I'm selling hats that show love to our parks. They're fitted, lightweight, vented, and breathable. The hats are covered with images that represent the parks, like the iconic Brown County Lookout Tower, the arches from Rose Island at Charlestown, a firefly to represent harmony, a bison from Obachi, and the red barn from Prophetstown. I designed the images and pattern, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. These are perfect for hiking, running, time on the water, and how cool will you look at the Indiana State Fair with one of these on? Check out the show notes for a link to buy your hat today. But let's get back to Bryce Canyon. After we finished at Sunrise and Sunset Point, I wanted to drive through the southern portion of the park to see some of those lookouts, but we didn't have time. Like in Zion, we barely scratched the surface. This is another park where it would be easy to spend a couple days. We did finish by heading to one of the highest places in the park.
The final lookout was definitely well worth it. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Bryce Point. So Bryce Point was one that, it was cool. It was just a different perspective and view of the canyon itself. You basically had a nice fenced-in, safe lookout that kind of stuck out, jutted out from the mountain itself. That was really cool.
And we were at the absolute highest point in the park because it was, what, 8,200 feet?
8,300, actually.
8,300.
Yeah. That was a great way to kind of finish off because it was part of certain trails, but we weren't doing those ones. But more time, highly encourage people to do that one.
Yeah, you could have started there and done the rim loop, which I think they said was 11 miles if you did the entire rim loop.
That's right.
Which you could do and would be cool, but I would rather get down into the canyon.
Yeah, getting into the canyon is a whole different perspective. It's definitely worth doing, just because you go from seeing both perspectives, right? The top looking down and the bottom looking up. So it was nice to be able to see both sides of it, top and bottom. So perfect way to do the hike that we did.
Bryce Point is on the southern end of the amphitheater we had just hiked in, so it provided us with another angle of the hoodoos. They felt even more densely packed in this section and had us doing our best to capture the beauty with our cameras. Of Utah's Mighty Five, Bryce Canyon had the most jaw-dropping, out-of-this-world scenery. So can you blame me for trying to remember it through pictures? But I think we all know, this is the kind of place you need to visit in person to truly soak it all in. It's a park I want to go back to and hike even more. There were several places I could have sat for a long time, simply in awe of this vast, creative, insane world we get to be part of when we spend time in the parks. Next week, we're headed to Capitol Reef National Park. And once again, we were stunned by the diverse landscape on our drive from one park to the next.
This is the craziest place where we are right now. Like, the mountains look green. Like, this is crazy. I don't know even where we are driving right now.
I know. We're the only cars out here.
Yeah.
There's nobody really out here. I'm almost surprised there's a paved road through here because of how remote this is. And we saw some antelope run by.
And a lot of cattle.
Okay.
What the heck is that?
What is this old place?
Dude, that looks crazy.
That served a purpose.
That looks like it looks like an old bad guy's hideout.
Yeah. There was definitely an outlaw hiding out there from the law
for sure.
at one point.
There may still be.
There may still be.
In the Parks is part of the Get Indiana podcast network. If you love discovering what makes Indiana a great place, join thousands of Hoosiers keeping up with the latest and greatest happenings at getindiana.com. You can check out other podcasts, read blogs, and subscribe to the weekly newsletter. A big thanks to my brothers for letting me interview them for this episode. In the Parks is obviously not associated with the National Park Service, but I am so grateful for the work they do for our parks. Be sure to visit In the Parks online to purchase your State Parks hat. Follow along on social media to see the beauty of our parks. And I greatly appreciate your comments and reviews. That's what helps more people find this show. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the parks.